Hi, everybody. You're listening to Comics and History, episode number 105, part 2, Exploring the Chapterverse, continued. No intro music this time, folks, as we are coming back from recess and I still have a fair amount of material to get through. If you have not listened to part 1 of episode number 105, please put this episode on pause. Go back and listen to part 1 of episode number 105. That's where I explain what the Chapterverse is, the rationale behind the creation of the Chapterverse, and I spoke about 3 titles: Freelance, Agents of Pact, and Captain Canuck. All wonderful titles that are from Chapter House Comics, Canada's largest comics publisher. All right, so near the end of part 1, I was speaking about season 3 of Captain Canuck, and now I'm going to talk about the Pitiful Human Lizard. Because this is a creator-owned title, it has not undergone any renumbering. So it picked up with, I want to say, issue number 12. And like I said in part 1, since the beginning, Mr. Jason Liu has always been very enthusiastic about making the Pitiful Human Lizard a character who is in the same universe and thus able to interact with Captain Canuck. Mr. Liu has done a wonderful job of setting up the world of the Pitiful Human Lizard. It's a world in which Lucas Barrett is not the only costumed hero. We've also been introduced to Mother Wonder, the Majestic Rat, and Lady Accident. We've also been introduced to some very interesting, very colorful costumed villains in the title. But now, as part of the year-long Chapterverse storyline, we're seeing that the Pitiful Human Lizard is in over his head to an even higher extent. For those of you who have never read The Pitiful Human Lizard, Lucas Barrett is a young man who has a 9-to-5 office job. He spends his work days in an office cubby, but during the evenings, during weekends, he puts on a homemade costume that includes various adhesive products from his father's adhesives company, and he goes into action as a human lizard. And he is called the Pitiful Human Lizard by a number of people in the general population because while he has a heart of gold and he has a true understanding of what it means to be a hero, Lucas is just not a good hand-to-hand combatant. Thank goodness he has a superhuman healing factor, which came about as a result of taking part in the experiment of a trial drug to make some money to pay for his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, because he gets gutted, gored, mauled, you name it, issue in and issue out. And now with this alien incursion going on and Toronto getting trashed, Lucas Barrett needs to rely on that healing factor even more than ever. What I really liked about reading the first couple of issues of The Pitiful Human Lizard, which are part of this year-long Chapterverse storyline, is that the focus right now really appears to be on how a hero and how the general public are affected when there is a crisis-level event. Of course, for those of you who have read Pitiful Human Lizard, you can probably already figure out that Lucas gets pretty badly beaten up during the alien incursion. And so even though he wants to stay and he wants to help as many people as he can, he is, in the end, only human. And so he does have to go home at the end of the day to rest and recharge. And so issue number 13 takes place pretty well on a TTC streetcar, just showing what Lucas is going through physically and emotionally. He's badly beaten, he's exhausted, and this story just reflects what goes on in Toronto so well. I'm a regular TTC rider, and yeah, unfortunately, there are some TTC drivers who are not the friendliest of people, but then you get people like the streetcar driver who Lucas meets on the night that he has to come home, and this driver is very much like Lucas. He's a hero. And he's like Tom Evans at this point, in that he's a hero who doesn't wear a mask or a cape, but in his capacity as a streetcar driver, he still wants to help those in need. Seeing the other riders on the streetcar also really reflects life in Toronto. I've been a Torontonian all my life. I believe that the majority of Torontonians are good, honest, hardworking people who care about their fellow citizens. But like any city in Toronto, you do have those who are mean-spirited, and those who will see somebody who's having a hard time and they'll stare, they'll ask inappropriate questions, they'll just be mean, whether through their words or through their actions. And so while he's on the streetcar, still in costume, badly beaten, exhausted, Lucas encounters a number of citizens who approach him in different ways. And so there were points where I was looking at certain riders, how they were dealing with or interacting with Lucas, and thinking, wow, they're real jerks. And I cheered when the streetcar driver intervened. I also cheered when I saw that there were citizens who were riding the streetcar with Lucas who were trying to help him and defending other people. And Mr. Liu has this wonderful way of injecting humor throughout his books. Even when Lucas is dealing with very hard things, there are still things you can chuckle at. And even though this is, I would say, the darkest of stories that have been presented in The Pitiful Human Lizard so far, I really like how Mr. Liu still manages to give a positive ending, a sense of hope for Lucas. Now, as for this series in general right now, I don't think, based on what I've read, that this title is going to focus entirely on what's happening during the alien invasion. I think more of the straight-up action conflict with the aliens is going to be seen in Captain Canuck and maybe even in Phantoma. But what I'm appreciating about Mr. Liu's contribution is that we're going to see that even during a crisis, life still has to go on. People still have to go to work. People are still going to go out. They're going to meet with their friends. They're going to take in the sights. And so I feel we're going to see that in Mr. Liu's book, but at the same time, we're also going to get plenty of references to the fact that the city has been shaken, and shaken quite badly, by a crisis-level event. All right, and now for the third book in Wave 2, and that is Phantoma. Fantoma tells the story of 24-year-old Paz Gallegos, young woman living in the States, and she's struggling to balance, her work and her family commitments. She has two younger twin sisters who she loves dearly and takes care of. Not sure what's happened with the mom. Dad, I get the impression, is something of a deadbeat. And so it's up to Paz to make money to support herself and her sisters. I also get a sense that the sisters are not living in a very good neighborhood. And over the course of the first issue of Fantoma, we see that there is a deadly curse that has affected Paz, and she is transformed into Fantoma. And when she does become Fantoma, or perhaps I should say is possessed by the spirit of Fantoma, we get a complete physical transformation, and Fantoma appears as a wraith-like skeletal being, long flowing white hair, a ghastly blue skull for a face, tattered black dress. And I feel very bad for Paz because I get the sense that she is a very sweet young lady, very loving, and for some reason she has been cursed to carry this vengeful spirit. Lots of questions in this. What exactly is Fantoma? What is the nature of this being? What's going to happen to Paz's sisters? Because clearly something's going to happen, and Paz, as Fantoma, is going to be forced to come north to interact with the other members of the Chapterverse. What exactly is Fantoma's involvement going to be in this? Is Fantoma related to these aliens? Is there some history between Fantoma and the aliens? Lots of great questions produced after only one issue that was brilliantly written and drawn. Written by Ray Fox and drawn by Sue Lee. Ray Fox should be familiar to more recent readers of DC Comics. Mr. Fox had the very unthankful job of stepping in as a writer of Batgirl after longtime writer Gail Simone was unceremoniously dumped by her editor on Batgirl. And Mr. Fox did a great job of continuing the storylines that Ms. Simone had set up. And then when the ship was righted and Ms. Simone was brought back to Batgirl, after doing a really good job of taking over the title, Mr. Fox was simply expected to step aside. So really nice to see that Mr. Fox has a position here writing this title at Chapter House. Felt very much to me like a horror story. So I really like that in addition to some really great street level superhero action, to some really great pedal to the metal, high octane superhero action in Captain Canuck, in addition to espionage and intrigue type stories told in Agents of Pact. We're also getting some horror storytelling here in Fantoma. Sue Lee's art is just ethereal and fits very well with this genre of storytelling. I was especially struck by some of the I was thinking for the right term. I was really struck by the historical background